was really, for me, just a kind of traditional English growing up. I came from like a Christian family, but not a strict Christian family. My mum and dad were divorced from a young age. So really, growing up, I had nothing particularly special, but really just a traditional English background. Really, when I started reaching secondary school age, that was really when I started to experience new cultures, new experiences. And one of the more common cultures that was in Enfield at the time was like a sort of Indian Pakistani mix of Islam culture that obviously was quite sort of common in the area as well. And as I sort of went through secondary school, I started building friendships and relationships with like different cultures, and a lot of them were Muslim. So that's when I really started to build up a kind of connection and sort of better understanding with Islam. But really growing up in Enfield, coming from an traditional English background, my parents are both English, my grandparents on both sides are English, and as far as I know, going back and back and back, it's all pretty much English. So really, it started off I was out with a lot of friends, usually, like drinking, unfortunately, and doing things which is quite common in this culture, in this country at the moment, unfortunately. But when I started reaching the age of around 15 or 16, the friends which I built up through secondary school, who I've become very close with by this time, many of them being Muslim, that's when I really started to get a deeper understanding of the religion and what it was all about. And from early on, I was always extremely interested in Islam and Muslims in general, you know, what they did, why they did it, because there was so much passion of the path of the Ahlul Bayt. Well, for the first year after I reverted, I wasn't quite sure what particular path I was on. I wasn't sure whether to pray like this, hands down, anything like that. I had Sunni friends and I also had Shia friends. So I was completely split in the middle as to which one I wanted to be. My Sunni friends would obviously sort of kind of pull me towards Sunni, and my Shia friends, of course, would obviously want to convince me to be Shia. But obviously, because of my lack of knowledge on each particular subject, I just didn't know which one was the path for me. There was a period of time where possibly I could have turned Sunni simply because I was surrounded by friends who were Sunni, so naturally I would follow their way of praying, for example, and listen to their stories and teachings, for example. But there was a particular family in particular who I'm very close with, and I have a lot to thank them for in terms of the knowledge which they've provided me, the help they've given me in choosing the right path which I'm on today, and also helping me to be the person which I am today. And that is the Fawaz family. They're very, very close friends of my family again. They're a Shia family from Middle East, and the knowledge which they provided me, and also not just the knowledge, but also the attitude and the way in which they invited me towards the Ahlul Bayt. Many of my Sunni brothers, unfortunately, the way they would try to bring me towards their way of thinking would be to kind of highlight negative points about Shiaism, and this in particular is what made me think, well, if this is the attitude which I'm being told by the Shia brothers of mine, then perhaps Shiaism has a very good way of thinking which I like, which is basically there's no prejudice. They don't mind how you pray. As long as you pray towards God, that is everything. So anyway, the more I started to research about the topics, about the Imams, about the followers of the Prophet, about the Prophet himself, the way he used to pray, things like this, and issues, beliefs, topics, stories, everything. Eventually, I came to the realization that Shiaism and the way in which they follow the Imams after the Prophet, and the Imams themselves, were such inspirational people in their time. Even to this day, their sayings, their stories, and what they stood for still stands in the modern day. The way that they stood up against injustice, the way that they fought for the weaker people in society at the time. It's just such a fantastic example of how human beings should be. How can I follow anyone else except the Ahlul Bayt, who are by far, in my entire life, I've never seen a more perfect example of how a family, how people should be in life, not just religiously, but also in society, the way that they act to people and the way that they are with everybody on this planet. So in the end, it was really down to studying more about the Imams, studying more about Shias themselves, and listening to the debates and discussions between Sunni and Shia, which really led me to believe that Shia was the one for me, because my beliefs were far more similar to Shia than